All right, team, welcome back to After Hours special edition show here on a Friday. We are going to get into some pretty exciting content today discussing Casper, XRP, this new Casper Milestone with this partnership's pretty big. We're going to get into that. XRP community news. I know on Wednesday's show I titled it XRP community is attacking us. You know, sometimes I'm in the XRP community and sometimes I disassociate with everyone else, So we're going to be talking about some of the exciting things, the developments happening with Ripple, happening with partnerships, new stablecoins coming to the XRP ledger. Going to discuss that also as well, the US embracing a digital future with this Genius Act. And I got to tell you guys, if this Genius Act did not get passed, forget about everything else with crypto. I mean, this was very simple. Stable coins, easy for companies to use and transact with stable coins. If we couldn't get through this, forget about anything related to crypto, some of the denser things we talk about. So as it relates to the market, Maddie, I mean, Bitcoin new all-time high was set. We haven't really got to discuss that. Bitcoin pulled back a little bit here today, so we can't keep going higher. What is the reason of that? Why can't we just keep going higher, Matt?
Yeah, so Bitcoin's had a nice little breakout here. We did the rebalancing move that I was looking for. We came down to $76,000 or so, which everyone told me was impossible because of sentiment, impossible because of institutional involvement. We did that rebalancing move, and the narrative's changed again. And then we see those nice moves higher. We reached $112,000. Then, of course, good old Donald Trump decides to launch another 50% tariff on the EU this morning. So we saw some of those gains given back. Now we're still trading around $108,000 at time of recording here, and we've made some meaningful progress. But I do believe we're overextended. We talked on the episode yesterday at cryptocharge.com about the RSI, the relative strength index for Bitcoin, showing that we are in overbought territory. And the last time we were deeply in overbought territory like this was actually back in November when the markets were very, very hot. So I think that we've seen some nice breakouts here. I think we're in need of a correction at this point. Whatever the narrative ends up being, this time it's more tariffs. But you can't go up in a straight line forever.
Absolutely. And the hype, Matt, is gathering. The optics on Bitcoin, when we get back into price discovery mode, the euphoria starts to set in. And this is going to be the most euphoric time in your life here, team, upcoming here with, Bitcoin setting a new all-time high. When we're in price discovery, everyone's feeling good. Altcoins usually turn around, and then what happens is that you feel super freaking rich, and then you make rash decisions and start acting like a maniac and spending money. Oh yeah, I have a bunch of money in crypto now. I could do whatever I want. No, you can't. All right, stick to the plan, stick to the TP plan, and don't deviate from that. This is probably the biggest struggle. Everyone gets to this point where Bitcoin's back in price discovery, altcoins about to kick off. Hopefully we can get over some of this macro news first, but this would be typically the moment for that to happen. And then everyone wants to act a fool. Everyone wants to start, chucking their kids' college funds into crypto. Everyone wants to start buying the latest and greatest altcoin. Everyone starts making crazy decisions here, teams, or even I've seen some online. It's like, well, actually, I'm not even going to sell. I'm just going to wait till next bull run to sell because it's going to be more then. It's like, okay, then you're not even getting on board with what we're talking here with our investment strategy. So team, if you need an investment strategy, you have to check out CryptoCharge. CryptoCharge.com is where we're from, the crypto education platform. Matt, what is the team getting at CryptoCharge?
Yeah, so we do a fully comprehensive program there. We're live 5 days a week, breaking down the charts, breaking down the macro, breaking down any important fundamental pieces of news when it relates to our projects. We have our coin library with analysis updated regularly, exits, entry plans, full analysis of what's going on with those coins, educational material, as well as the Discord. That all comes down to $49 a month with code YouTube, including a 30-day free trial. So I hope you guys come check us out at cryptocharge.com.
Absolutely, Matt. So let's get into some of the Casper things we should discuss today. I think since, we've been out since, I think, the 5th of May. So this is our first after hours in quite a couple weeks here, team. So what has happened since then? Casper 2.0, Zug consensus, finality with transactions coming the moment they're added. This is a big upgrade, and this is something that has been marketed to the broad crypto industry. If you look at Casper Network, because of the we want partnerships, we want actual utility coming to the Casper network. And so this was a big event. I know some of you are like, well, this is for the developers, blah, 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 but we need to see consistent upgrades in the network. This isn't something that, we've been covering the XRP ledger, and there's updates within the XRP ledger. And so this is an ever evolving thing. Yes, we want utility today, but that's never going to come if the network itself isn't upgrading. On another note, just like paralleling that, the protocol, the association also has to upgrade too. Side note to this, Casper announced how they kind of want to change on-chain governance. And we talked about this Q4 of last year, how they were changing governance because how I title it, Miranel being like a dictator. And so we had to get this, association had to detach from the for-profit company. They did, and then you had the interim board step up. And then they announced this on-chain governance where the validators could vote on what's going to happen with the network and propose new ideas. And actually, Stoyer said something, I believe it was last week, and he said we are integrating on-chain governance mechanisms into the legal structure of the association itself. So in practice here, in certain decisions made via on-chain voting, they will be legally binding for the association and recognized by Swiss authorities. I don't think I've ever heard of this happening with any other blockchain. Have you, Matt?
I mean, to some extent, that is kind of how a DAO works, a decentralized autonomous organization. API 3, for example, you can utilize your API 3 tokens to cast governance votes on proposals, generate proposals, and essentially that creates an amendment to the bylaws of how the protocol works. So, of course, we're talking about a grander scheme here where we're now affecting, legal documents on a very traditional level. But this is, to some extent, how crypto should work on a truly decentralized level. And, of course, we're always going to argue about who's the most decentralized and, this person did this and this company does this and this, takes away the decentralized factor of it. But to some extent, you take away Casper Labs as the front runner in this position. We have Casper Association as the clear, entity that's responsible for development and maintaining of the network. And then you add in the ability for the community to amend the network based on what we see the, future needs of that network being. Those are very, very powerful tools. And it truly, to me, is what DLT is created for.
Absolutely, Matt. And I noticed on their website when gathering everything, they added a new little catchphrase for how they identify themselves. And I think it was like real world ready. I don't know. I can't find it right now, but it's something to the effect of real world ready blockchain. Ready, real world ready blockchain. Say that 5 times fast. It's it's ready for the real world. And I think, one of the big things that we've talked about over the years is we get really excited for partnerships. Think about IPWE, think about the Prove AI product that we thought was going to come to Casper Network. And then, for the last couple of months now, we've kind of been in what I feel like is a limbo. We've been, excited for Casper 2.0 and everything that comes along with that. That's not just the upgrade itself, but all of the tools that were coming along with Casper 2.0 and that are being rolled out right now. But we really wanted utility. We want that real world adoption because, upgradable smart contracts can be cool and all, but what if they're not being used? What is the token we are buying them for? What network? How is this actually going to help us investors? And that's where I really always want to bring it back to is the investor here. We're not here to talk about how cool Casper is. We do talk about how cool Casper is, and it is a very different blockchain than some of the other ones we talk about. But ultimately, how is this all going to propel price? And I'll tell you how this is going to propel price with big partnerships like this. AmeriCorp Investments to bring U.S. parking industry on chain with Casper Network. So this is a private holding company. They have a ton of patents, a lot doing with blockchain tech. And so AmeriCorp in their blockchain solution will leverage the Casper Network to provide trust in data, faster, clearer payments, real-time auditing, and eventually, this is the big one that we've talked a lot about recently, eventually tokenized ownership of revenue-generating parking assets. So, Maddie, this seems to be a big industry, and you've covered it a little bit. What's your kind of thoughts on this big partnership? Because it kind of sounds like IPWE to me, dude, kind of in that same vein, but definitely on a bigger level.
Yeah, absolutely. Parking is a really big industry as a whole. There's the valuation of the facilities themselves. whether we're talking about private facilities, maybe we're talking about also a combination of, government-sponsored ones where, you're parking at a city complex, but you still have to pay street parking, right? But we're talking about billions and billions of dollars that goes into this industry, maybe close to
millions and billions.
Billions of dollars, billions. They're going to park in big, beautiful parking lots. They're going to tokenize them. You're going to love it. Go ahead and rate my Trump impression, guys. Hopefully we're above a 6 here. But truly, guys, like when you look at some of these industries and some of these solutions, and we've talked about this a lot, not everything we talk about is super sexy, but it really doesn't matter if it's sexy or not. The goal is take industries, take platforms that are inefficiently being constructed now, bring audits on chain, bring the ability to manage employee hours on chain, the ability to tokenize and distribute shares of any industry to private investors that previously would have either had to be qualified purchasers or accredited investors. You're creating a more liquid marketplace. So when you have partnerships like this, and you also have big names behind it that are established, they're not new kids on the block that are seed funding or bootstrapping a few $1 million to try to get things together, which is not a bad thing. I'm very much an entrepreneur, and I'm very pro startup, but nonetheless, when you do have a little bit more of an established entity stepping in and saying, hey, we want to sandbox and experiment with this protocol, with this technology, and we see the value in it, I truly think that it starts to put a little bit more confidence in consumers. But again, guys, a lot of us have been investors this entire time. A lot of us were investors when things were very bleak. A lot of us were investors when there wasn't all of this bullishness, because we understood the underlying tech and we knew, hey, this is a bummer, this sucks, but we know that there will be new entities that will be attracted to this product in the future. And here we are just about 6 months later. And you have a very solid use case, right? And this isn't so much, again, an IPW that's still in the early phases that, could basically crumble at any moment here. This is a company that if they decide not to build on Casper, it's not because they're folding from a, financial standpoint. They've just decided that technology package or that DLT package isn't right for them. So I'm very excited for this. I think it's really going to, again, give us a great template for other companies to potentially look at once some of that test data is put out there, or even some of those real world deploys are out there. They can go, okay, how did AmeriCorp do this? What was their findings? What kind of success have they had? Great, let's try to emulate that. And it kind of creates that snowball effect. So I'm very excited for it, and I think it's a very big net positive thing for the network.
Absolutely. And so with this partnership, obviously there's some clarity there, but just speak about transactions here. The US parking industry is expected to generate 144 billion by the year 2030. So, is there an inflection point there? Is there like a chink in the armor that Casper can solve? Absolutely. And AmeriCorp Investments is going to utilize this. And the CEO actually had some positive remarks as it relates to this, and this is the statement he gave. He says, there's a tremendous opportunity to streamline parking transactions across the ecosystem using new blockchain-driven tech. This will lead to faster and more accurate payment clearing for all participants and large savings from simplifying the audit and regulatory process. So there is your kind of background with Casper team, this big freaking partnership. This should be very exciting for you. Yes, Casper is in a different stance. We look at it in a different light than we do other cryptos, not because we have a bias toward it, not because, we're emotionally tied to it, but because it is at a different phase than other networks are at, all right? And we must judge it accordingly to that. But now that we have, upgrades in the network, Casper 2.0, real utility coming to the network, now Casper is put in a position where it's like, well, now it's competing with some of the other cryptos we talk about. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen. We get a partnership and it's like, oh, Casper's on a Hedera level, or Casper's the next XRP or Bitcoin. It's like we're not next Ethereum. It's like we don't view it in that manner. All right, we're viewing it in an investor manner, looking to invest in an asset that's undervalued. Buy the asset, which we have. I'm overexposed to it. I know. And so now we want to see these big news events so we can potentially see, big price appreciation. Our view on big news events. We're not going to hype in and ape in. We welcome it, but we're not going to sit here and act like AmeriCorp Investments is going to drive Casper to $3 tomorrow, because it's not. Last note, Michael Stoyer is actually talking at SALT conference in Wyoming, with some pretty familiar faces also speaking there. Eric Trump, Cynthia Loomis, Tim Scott, Charles Hoskinson, the Wyoming governor, Kraken CEO. So a lot of people speaking there. And then you have Casper Association, Michael Stoyer, going to be speaking there about RWAs on on chain. So very exciting there. Give him some support there from the Crypto Charge team, because we back the guy. He's a great guy. We love having him on the show, and I'd love to get him back on to discuss this big partnership, and we have one guest on After Hours, and it's been him twice, and I think he's just a good guest. I think we can just keep that going. We just have the same reoccurring guests. We don't need anyone else. I talked to Matt. I was just like, dude, listen, if we're going to bring other guests on, they have to be Stoyer level. We can't have guests come on. Like, we've already set the bar,
Right. Can't move backwards.
Kevin Cage has already been on the live show on the website. Then public facing here, we've already had Stoyer. So it's like, we're not going to do like these regular goobers and bring those people on the show. Like, we got to bring Stoyer level people. So team, hook us up, start messaging some people so we can do some more interviews. Let's discuss XRP, and I'm going to rip through all this news here because it is a lot. A lot is going on within the XRP community, within Ripple itself, a lot of partnerships there. But just kind of in totality here, it's been a great year for the XRP community. I just want to start there because we're coming out of the SEC v Ripple era. We're coming out of the lawsuit where the center of crypto attacks was literally Ripple Labs. Like, Ripple Labs has been seeing the attacks and has been kind of the front-facing entity as it relates to the crypto industry. And most people, maybe don't like XRP. They don't like that digital token, and they, equate Ripple and the digital token. I get why, but obviously those are a digital asset in a company. But they looked at Ripple Labs and they really didn't care. I'm talking about like some of the Bitcoin maxis, Matt, that really didn't care about Ripple Labs. But what they didn't realize is how important Ripple was to the broader industry. And just before we saw an agreement with Ripple and the Securities Exchange Commission, we actually saw all the other lawsuits get dropped. The Kraken lawsuit, all the other lawsuits. And so
Coinbase.
Yeah, and so now, we're in a great position. Ripple's doing more partnerships, like, what we'll get into in a second. But I just want to lay that there because Ripple is really at the heart of the crypto ecosystem. What other entity could possibly, okay, yeah, Coinbase, yeah, some of these exchanges, but what about the companies that are front facing, and obviously Ripple's a for-profit company, they package XRP, and, now we have RLUSD being used. And so there's a lot of different, moving parts here, team, but Ripple was a big part of this, and people kind of overlook this. And now with the agreement between the SEC and Ripple, which Ripple paid a very small fine, way smaller than what we thought. It was not $2 billion, Matt. It was not $2 billion. What did it end up being, like 50 million or 75 million?
Yeah, it was a very small amount. And again, that was the biggest thing that a lot of people were hanging their hat on is, Ripple's going to have to sell all their XRP. They're going to be dumping on people were blaming Ripple for XRP's price action, throughout this entire bear market. And you can see fast forward, none of that came to fruition. They didn't dump. All of it's still in escrow. They paid a very, very small amount, and they're expanding, right? The second they had clarity in this lawsuit, they were like, cool, let's get back to work hiring back in America here. Let's start expanding again in America. So, again, guys, it's so much easier to see things when it's all, clear. But guess what? The cost of you guys waiting for all that clarity is exponential. 40 cents, 50 cents, 60 cents was offered to you guys for years on end. And now XRP won't give up $2. It will not give up $2, right? So same thing with Casper, right? You didn't want to buy at 0.006, you want to buy at 0.007, fine. Fast forward, we have a fantastic leadership team. We have a fantastic partnership on the horizon, and prices up over 2x from those lows. So remember, guys, there is a very big cost for comfort and safety in numbers.
Absolutely, Matt. That's really valuable right there. I'm going to rip through all the XRP community news right here. I told you I would, and it's a lot, but I'm just going to rattle off what's going on, a little quick description, then we're going to move on to the next one. So RLUSD on multiple exchanges now, including Kraken, integrating RLUSD into Ripple payments. This is coming for customers. Very exciting there. Next, Braza Group announces launch of USDB stablecoin on the XRP ledger. This is going to be pegged 1-to-1 with the dollar. USDB is backed by assets such as US and Brazilian government bonds. Really exciting there. The Braza Group CEO had mentioned that he thinks he can overtake 30% of the stablecoin market share there in Brazil. We'll have to wait and see and how we can take advantage of that. EuroP is now live on the XRP ledger. The digital euro economy is taking shape, but until now, it's been missing compliant, programmable euro liquidity. So EuroP is fully backed 1-to-1 with euro reserves. Next, StratX launches XSGB stablecoins. I hate some of these, these little the lettering here. It's just so difficult. We're going to be going to 5-letter stablecoins here, I promise. It's going to be 5-letter. We're going to be ABCDE stablecoin. So we got XSGD stablecoin on the XRP ledger, introducing it to the XRP ledger, fully regulated, programmable digital Singapore dollar on a public blockchain, purpose-built for large-scale tokenization of both crypto-native and real-world assets, looking to take advantage of cross-border payments there. And XSGD is already on Arbitrum, Avalanche, and Ethereum. But coming over to the ledger, last thing, so we had 3 stable coins there, and then RLUSD on top of that. Ripple builds on Dubai regulatory license to announce Zad Bank and Mamo as first blockchain-enabled payment clients in the UAE. So Ripple, 2 new customers that are going to be utilizing Ripple payments. Since becoming the first blockchain-enabled payments provider licensed to be licensed in the UAE, but licensed by the Dubai Financial Services Authority. You have to go through all the extracurriculars here with who's doing what. Ripple has established partnerships with Zad Bank and Mamo, who will utilize Ripple's blockchain-enabled cross-border payments solution. So, Matt, 3 new stable coins coming to XRP Ledger. We have RLUSD, of course. Adoption is growing for that. And then, after all of that, we get 2 new partnerships for Ripple payments. How bullish is this for the greater XRP community?
Very bullish, right? And again, it's not so much about the immediate, 24-hour volume that you see for each one of these stable coins. Again, what it really comes down to is that proof of concept over and over and over again of how easy was the integration, how programmable is it, what kind of flexibility do you have, how easy is it to build a permissioned environment on that network. And all of these use cases truly provide a lot more confidence and, again, just examples of what can be done on these networks for even bigger entities as they come. So each of these little companies, these little entities are really just building blocks to much greater adoption and much larger partnerships in the future.
Let's listen to Cynthia Loomis talk about the Genius Act. This is something very big, a very good stepping stone, and she's going to tell us why right now.
The Genius Act is a watershed moment in how we approach digital finance while also preserving the institutions that have served our nation for decades. Digital assets are the future, and it is our responsibility to ensure the United States continues to lead the way. The uncomfortable reality is that our payment system is outdated. Many of our financial rails date back to the 1970s and 80s, before the internet transformed how we live and work. When a small business owner in Cheyenne uses a traditional payment system to send a payment to a supplier overseas, they face up to 10 days and 2 to 5% transaction fees. This isn't just inconvenient, it's a complete disadvantage to American businesses. But digital assets changed all that. Stablecoins can complete these same transactions in seconds at a fraction of the cost, 365 days out of the year.
Boom. You got the crypto sell, the stablecoin sell right there by Cynthia Loomis. I think she broke it down pretty well, Matt. What do you think?
Absolutely. She's an absolute legend. I would say that she's had a lot of unpopular opinions as has come, kind of going against the grain of what a lot of people in Congress talk about. And remember, guys, that banks profit from the friction they create from being closed on the weekends, holding your money extra days, charging those percentages. They're not only charging those percentages when you send money overseas or even intrastate, right? Or intra within the U.S. state here. But they also make money lending your money while it's in transit, right? So those 10 days it's there, it's not just in the ether floating around somewhere. They're lending it out to FX traders. They're lending it out all over the board. And then on top of that, they're charging you for the transaction. So of course, that there's a reason why there hasn't been this just very clean, quick transition into stablecoin payments open 24/7, 365, because there is profit to be had in that friction. So I really applaud Loomis for really just being a consistent mouthpiece for the crypto community, for stablecoins, for Bitcoin, because there are more voices than not that are speaking out against it, and really only will join in when the mass majority feels that, again, that safety in numbers. My constituents also believe this. I'm now going to believe this as well. So you have Tom Emmer and Cynthia Loomis, probably two of the biggest speakers out there pro crypto this entire time through multiple administrations, and I'm very grateful for them.
So team, we've covered on the political front about crypto. We've covered everything from this Bitcoin. The government wanted to buy Bitcoin, and then it was 5 cryptos they want to buy, and then now we got the stablecoin clarity. We're getting clarity there. Next, I don't think you guys remember, but next on this list would be regulation as it relates to entities, to business entities. So that will be up next after stablecoin clarity. So if we can continue this path and continue clarity, a clear framework for the crypto industry, I don't see anything but progress ahead. All that's really we need here is a little bit of a tone down on some of these big macro events, tone down the war, tone down the tariffs, and I think we would be good. I think our crypto assets would do fairly well, but obviously we aren't the dictators of those scenarios. We don't get to decide what is and what isn't happening. All we can do personally is either buy or not buy, or strategize, or do something equivalent. So team, thank you for joining us today. A little special edition show here. Hopefully you got something valuable here. If you did, leave a like. We will not be here on Monday. Sorry, not going to be here. What's the reason? Is it a holiday?
Yeah, it's Memorial Day. I'll be in my pool drinking beer.
So team,
that's why.
so team, you will catch us though on Wednesday of next week. So if you have questions, leave them in the comment section down below, and we will see you guys then. Bye.